What if some of the most basic, foundational beliefs that we hold have gotten a little cloudy over time? Well, today we're diving into what's been called a crisis of clarity inside the Ethiopian Evangelical Church. And our guide for this is the theologian Paulos Fekadu. He argues that the only way forward is to get back to the absolute basics. So let's jump in and see what he's getting at.
Right out of the gate, Paulos frames this issue not as just a few isolated problems, but as something systemic. I mean, look at this quote. He says the doctrinal confusion has contaminated everything. What he's saying is, this isn't about pointing fingers at one person or one group anymore. The challenge is much bigger. It's about addressing the very foundations of what people believe.
So, what does this crisis of belief actually look like on the ground? Well, Paulos gives us a really clear and honestly a pretty challenging diagnosis of where all the confusion really starts.
He breaks it down into these 4 areas that are all connected, like a chain reaction. It all starts with doctrinal problems, what people actually believe, and from there it just bleeds out into practical problems, how they live, how they worship, and that in turn can lead to moral and even leadership failures. Paulos is basically arguing you can't just fix one of these. You have to go back to the root of it all, the doctrinal confusion.
And what's really fascinating about this is how Paulos's own strategy has changed over time. He's open about it. He says he used to focus on confronting individual errors, kind of calling people out directly. But as you can see here, he's totally shifted his approach. He realized the problem was just too big for that. So now his goal isn't just to pull out the weeds one by one. It's to plant something so healthy and so true in their place that the weeds just can't grow back. It's about displacing error with truth.
All right, so with that diagnosis on the table, let's get into the first big idea Paulos wants to clarify. And it's a huge one. It's about salvation, one of the most central beliefs in Christianity. His argument is that we've kind of been telling an incomplete story. He asks this really powerful question. And for a lot of people, the honest answer is probably yeah. Or at least, that's where all the focus goes, right? Our songs, our sermons, they often zoom in exclusively on the crucifixion. But Paulos argues that when we do that, we're actually missing like 3/4 of the story.
And this is where he lays it all out for us. He says salvation isn't a single moment. It's a whole 4-part event. First, you've got the incarnation. The mind-blowing humility of God becoming human. Second, there's Christ's righteous life, a life of perfect obedience that none of us could ever live. Third, of course, the crucifixion, where the debt for sin is finally paid. And then the grand finale, the resurrection, the ultimate proof that death has been defeated. The point is you need all 4. They are all essential pieces of one single incredible story. Now, this idea of seeing the whole picture leads us right into another major point of clarity. And this one tackles a massive, widespread misunderstanding about the afterlife. So Paulos traces a ton of our modern confusion about the afterlife all the way back to early Bible translations, like the King James Version. What happened was, the translators took a few very distinct Greek and Hebrew words, Sheol, Hades, Gehenna, and they kind of smushed them all together, translating every single one with just one English word, hell. And this created a kind of theological mashup that, honestly, we're still trying to untangle today. Okay, so first, let's clear up Sheol, or Hades in the Greek. In the Old Testament, this was simply the realm of the dead. And here's the crucial part. It was the destination for everybody, the righteous, like Jacob and David, and the unrighteous. The best way to think about it is like a temporary holding place, not the final place of punishment. Gehenna, on the other hand, that's what we typically think of when we say hell, the final, permanent lake of fire. But here is the absolute key takeaway from Paulos's teaching. This is a future reality. It's the place of punishment that comes after the final judgment. As he puts it so bluntly, no one is there yet. This table just lays it out so clearly, right? Sheol is temporary, Gehenna is permanent. Sheol was for everyone who died back then, Gehenna is for the unrighteous after judgment. One was for waiting, the other is for punishment. Getting this difference straight is, well, it's absolutely crucial for reading huge chunks of the Bible correctly.
All right, the last big clarification we're going to look at takes us right to the heart of one of the most powerful and, frankly, debated moments in the entire Bible, the cross itself, and the question of what was really happening within God.
These are the words Christ cried out from the cross, just harrowing words. And for centuries, they've led people to a very specific and, according to Paulos, a very problematic conclusion.
This is the question, right here. A really common teaching is that in that moment, because God the Father is so holy he couldn't even look at sin, he turned his back on the Son, that the perfect fellowship of the Trinity was actually broken. But Paulos argues that if you believe that, it has these massive, damaging theological consequences.
So his answer is an emphatic no. Paulos makes it clear this was not a cry of divine separation. Instead, it was an expression of profound human anguish. This was the Son, in his complete and total humanity, feeling the weight of unimaginable suffering and quoting the first line of Psalm 22 to give voice to that feeling of abandonment.
And this is why it matters so much. If you believe the Trinity was broken, it puts a crack in our understanding of God's very nature. Paulos asserts the opposite, that the cross is the ultimate revelation of God's unified love and his presence in our suffering, not his absence from it. I mean, think about it. If the Father had truly abandoned that moment, how could the cross possibly be our greatest boast?
So, after all this pretty heavy theological deep diving, you might be thinking things sound a little bleak. But actually, Paulos is incredibly optimistic. He sees this powerful new movement taking shape right now. He's seeing a new generation that is just getting tired of superficial teaching. They are actively looking for substance, for the very kind of clarity we've been talking about. They're asking the hard questions about salvation, about the nature of God, and they're just not satisfied with the simple, easy answers anymore. And that hunger for truth, he says, that's where the real hope for the church is.
But this hunger for truth creates a brand new challenge. As this chart kind of shows, the demand for deep, solid teaching is just skyrocketing, but the supply of qualified teachers who can actually meet that demand, it's dangerously low. The church basically grew so fast that it outpaced its own ability to train enough good guides for the next generation.
So this leaves the church at a really critical crossroads. The desire for truth is there, which is an amazing development, but the infrastructure to actually satisfy that desire is lagging behind. Answering this question is going to be one of the biggest challenges for the church in the years to come.
So, where do we go from here? Paulos has helped clear the path on some huge topics: salvation, the afterlife, the nature of God. But the work is definitely not over. So the final question really is for us. What other foundational truths have we maybe allowed to get a little fuzzy? And what do we, personally, need to rediscover next?